Welcome to episode 35 of 10 Minute Record Reviews. And this time we're going to talk about the debut album from Maze, featuring Frankie Beverly. And this is a 1977 release on Capitol Records. This is the first pressing of that, which sounds pretty darn good. This is, as I mentioned, their debut album. If you don't know Maze, and Maze is one of those groups which had a great deal of popularity with African Americans, still does, they're still touring, but for whatever reason never managed to cross over, unlike a lot of other really prominent R&B acts, never managed to cross over successfully commercially into well, let's call it candidly, white America. They are maybe, well, they're very much their own thing, but they have the most perfect blend, I think, of funk, soul, and Latin, and all combined in a very sort of distinctive sound, which is all their own, which was a contrast to the very heavily sort of disco flavored work that a lot of people were doing in around 1977 when this came out. They chose a partly more traditional lane, but certainly their own lane. They stuck to it, and they were rewarded for doing so. Like all Maze albums, what you expect is phenomenal singing by Frankie Beverly, who is the genius behind this group, and really this is a vehicle for his singing, his songwriting, his artistry in general. Which is not to say that the rest of the players aren't great, because they are, but this is very much Frankie Beverly's thing. So this was the first of 8 consecutive gold studio records which Maze put out. Their first 8 records all went gold. And they also put out a gold live album at that time as well. They were consistently at the top of the R&B charts all the way through. Never really made much of a dent in the Billboard 200, as I mentioned, though this one did get to number 52. Maze came out of Philadelphia, and that is where Frankie Beverly grew up and where he honed his sound, originally singing in those classic sort of doo-wop groups and street corners and so on. He eventually formed an 8-piece band called Raw Soul in the early 70s. They are actually fantastic, and I recommend listening to their tunes on YouTube. And there's a few particularly live pieces that are up there, which are tremendous. But they never managed to get any chart success or score a deal until they moved to San Francisco, which they did in 1973. And they ended up backing up Marvin Gaye. And he took a real shine to them, made them change their name from Raw Soul to Maze, or at least suggested that they do so. And in large part because of their association with Marvin, they got a record deal with Capitol just a few months after beginning to work with him. And they have, therefore, a bit of a similar arc to both the Eagles and the band, in that they are a cohesive musical unit which became well known because of their backing up a much better known artist, and eventually, of course, emerged from the shadow of that artist, and they emerged from the shadow of Marvin Gaye. Like the Eagles too, they achieve a nice synthesis of sounds from elsewhere in the United States, musical traditions from elsewhere in the United States, with a kind of a quintessentially California sound, and in particular, at least I can hear the influence of War, and the kind of the Latin-tinged funk of War finds its way sort of through the cracks of Maze's songs. As I said, they've sort of found their own style. It created a really loyal following for them. And it is, I think, some of the most seductive baby-making music that's ever been made. Not in a cartoonish way like Barry White. This is, there is a lot of real, I mean, I don't mean to be disrespectful to Barry, but just to say positively, there's a lot of really real artistry on this album, and on their other records too. Interestingly, on this album, the inner sleeve has a reproduction of the poem, oops, I don't know if you can see it there, Desiderata, by, I may be not pronouncing that correctly, by the American 20th century poet Max Ehrmann. The album notes actually credit this as coming from a 17th century carving in a Baltimore church. Not actually true. The poem was written in the early 20th century. As far as I can tell on the internet, nobody actually has discovered that what's, maybe it's just too niche, that attribution is incorrect. So there you go. I'll claim copyright on that. So as for the music, which is tremendous, it begins with the track "Time Is on My Side," not a cover of the Stone song. These are all Beverly compositions. Wonderful riff from Wayne Thomas on guitar to start the song, playing against Robin Dewey's slap bass, which is fantastic. And if you're a fan of soul, sort of funk soul instrumentation, like this album will be completely your jam. And the production, by the way, is wonderful as well. This is our first introduction to Frankie's raspy soul tenor, which is great, and the band is just super tight. Then on to a song which became one of their signatures, a song called "Happy Feelings." It's a lengthy song, about over 7 minutes long. It's kind of their stock in trade, a smooth mid-tempo ballad, but lots of groove to the song. Lots of open space for the lead vocal, great support, vocal support from the band. There's not a lot of other groups who managed to pull off that particular combination quite as well. Then "Colorblind," which opens with a riff I think the Commodores would have been proud of, settles into a really great groove and has this message of racial peace. And then the side closes out with "Lady of Magic," which is a very simple love song. I think I mentioned Baby making music earlier. This is very much that beautiful group harmonies in the chorus, and that closes out side one. Side two begins with "While I'm Alone," which is one of those songs I mentioned about the there's a sound that's very similar to War at times here. This is one of those songs. It's got a real Latin feeling. It's got a great groove. It's got a very infectious little guitar hook. Lyrically, it's an ode to a long distance relationship. It's got wonderful backup singing from the band, and one of the most seamless and yet effective, probably effective because it is seamless, key changes that I've ever heard in a pop song. Then followed by "You," another great sort of extended groove over 8 minutes long. This song, they take their time, fair enough, settling into it. It's a very beautiful love song. Frankie carries a vocal very well. It shows off, I think, the real tightness of the rhythm section in Maze, and because the rhythm section, for me, totally in the pocket all the way through this particular song, and it's also has a really great bridge, a nice change of pace, which is quite guitar driven. Then the final piece is the longest song of the album, which is "Look at California." It's a beautiful song. It's a very gentle groove. It's kind of a love song to California. It's even though it's sort of about an abstract thing like a geographical location. The emotion is actually quite heartfelt. These are guys from Philly who are really happy to be by the sea in California. As a beautiful solo from Wayne Thomas on guitar, and then a really wicked up-tempo Latin section as well. So a great way to close out the album. So this is a fantastic debut. You can really tell why Marvin Gaye wanted to work with them. You can really tell why Capitol wanted to snap them up as soon as there was an opportunity. It contains a lot of different moods and a lot of different styles, especially side two. And if you like Marvin Gaye or you like the Commodores or War, you're going to love this record. I give it 4.5 stars out of 5.